One of the bigger news stories of this year was the story about the guy who went and shot up the San Bernadino Center in California, or a center in San Bernadino in California, and the FBI got a hold of his phone afterwards and they wanted to get into to see what he was up to. They wrote to Apple to ask Apple to create a new operating system for the phone so that they could get in, because obviously they didn't know the PIN, but there was a big fight about that. Apple said they didn't want to do that, and lots of people were sort of on side with Apple, saying, well, why would you do that? If you can do that for that, then someone else could get their hands on it, and that's no good. So it's probably best if that's not an option. After a bit of a fight about it, they went to the courts, and the courts ruled that Apple had to create the operating system for the FBI to be able to get into the phone, and that was called, I think it was GOVT-OS, or Government OS, in a sort of Apple naming standard. But Apple, I think, were going to appeal it, and just in the time that it was taking for it all to go through, after they had 3 months or something, and then before that time was up, the FBI came out and said, it doesn't matter anymore, we've got into the phone, just forget about it. One of the more difficult things with getting into the phone is that you could just try and brute force it. You could try and guess the passcode. It was a 4-digit passcode, that's quite important in this. They could just try and enter it, and then wait, but after 5 goes, the phone will time out and it'll say you have to wait a minute to try again. And then once it comes back on, if you try again and you get it wrong, it'll say you've got to wait 5 minutes now. And then after the 5 minutes, it just keeps going on. If you keep getting it wrong, you have to wait an hour. That's obviously not going to work, because you'd have to know pretty quickly what the PIN was, otherwise it's going to take days and days to unlock the phone. So today we're going to have a look at how they did it, how they managed to get into the phone, and the sort of way that they went about trying it out. Trying to guess the 4-digit PIN would be hard enough. So there's 10 options, and then 4 of those, 10 to the power of 4. You've got 4 different numbers to enter, and each one can be 1 to 0. So that's 10 numbers, so you do 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So there's 10,000 different combinations for the 4-digit code. 10,000 tries could be required, but you only get 5, and then it locks the phone on the next one. So if you enter 5, then it locks it for a minute, you can't try again for a minute, and then if you enter another one wrong, it locks it for 5 minutes, and then if you enter another one wrong, it ends up you're locking out for an hour. Obviously that's never going to work. If you've got to enter 10,000 codes, it's just going to take forever. You need a quicker way to do it. 10,000 codes, by the way, if you're having to wait an hour between every 5, it's a long time anyway. Also, you would never know if it was turned on to delete all the data after you'd entered the code wrong 10 times, which is an option, and that would have completely ruined the FBI's day if that had been the case. You need to be careful about how they were going to do it, so that's why they said, can we get this other Apple to create this other operating system which we can sort of sideload onto the device and get into it that way. So what they did is they took the front off the phone. This one will come off easily. Took the front off the phone, and they took the logic board out here, and on the front of the logic board up here was the chip called the A9 chip, which is Apple's sort of microcontroller chip. It's called the system on chip, and basically everything to do with the phone is on here. But behind that, right behind it, is a thing called a NAND, which is like an SSD. It's the storage for the phone basically. I'm not going to take this off to show you because it's a bit of a long job to get it off, but on the back side is the storage part. They didn't do it first on the phone that they had. They got, I think they said they bought from eBay some other phones, some other iPhone 5Cs to test on, that they knew the code for obviously, and then they took the storage off of it, and the way you do that is you have to heat it up to about 300 degrees to desolder it, and then it's also stuck on as well. So they got it off, and basically what it looks like is a bit like, this is what it looks like. So on the front of the logic board you've got the A9 chip, and on the back you've got the NAND storage. So to take this off, because they obviously knew that within the NAND storage held some information which would be helpful, they took the storage off of the phone that they first got, and this is kind of what it looks like. Can you see? This is kind of what it looks like. So you've got your, this is the same as here, the logic board, and then when you heat this chip up to about 300 degrees, becomes desoldered from these pads on the logic board, and then you can take it off. But it's obviously a lot of work to take that off, and it's quite dangerous as well. You wouldn't want to go straight in here with the phone that you're trying to get into. You want to try it on a phone that doesn't matter first. So they took this off, and then what they did was, the first step here was just to check if they could still access this after they took it off. So they ran wires, this is the back view of the NAND, they ran wires from all these pads to the corresponding places on the NAND, like that, and then once it was all connected up, they soldered it all together. But this was off the phone now. Once they'd got that done, they powered the phone back on, and it didn't work. It kept crashing because the rate at which the data comes through these wires, or through the pads here, wasn't coping very well with the wire mechanism that they'd implemented to test it. So they did some things. They put in some capacitors or something, or resistors on these wires to make it work properly, so it had the right power potential to carry the data across as fast as it could, and then they got it working. From there, they sort of built this all out of the back of the phone. So they got the phone, the NAND behind here. They cut a hole in the phone here, put the phone all back together, and ran the wires out the back so the NAND could be put here. And then they put a sort of breadboard on the back and wired it all up through that. So they cut the hole in the back, and they took the wires that they'd put on the NAND, and they soldered them to a little connector, which is kind of like this connector. Soldered them up to a connector like that, and put that connector on the back of the screen. Then they had the corresponding connector which they connected to different wires, which were soldered onto the NAND. So now they could hot switch the NAND out for another one, which is a handy thing to be able to do. So what they did to get the data off of the shooter's phone was something called mirroring, which is quite a common thing in sort of storage solutions. You'll have, like, if you've got like an array of disks, one way of getting rid of the potential problems that can happen if one of your disks fails is to mirror it. So you have things like RAID arrays which constantly mirror exactly the same as what's on another disk, and then if one disk fails, you've always got that backup from the one that you're mirroring to. So obviously there's potential problems here where firstly you've got to get the storage off, and then you've got this time delay thing when you try and put it in, so brute force attacking this is a bit of an issue. So what they did was they got this solution done, and then they did it on the shooter's phone, and then they took the NAND off and they mirrored it, which is a whole different story. They managed to mirror it a bit, but there's hidden sort of sectors on it which they couldn't mirror properly. So they sort of, from what I understand, they just left it, and they had it a sort of mirrored version of it which they used. And then they went onto the shooter's phone, put it all back together like this, and then they had this thing out the back, and then they put in the pin. So now we've got this phone, effectively the storage is cloned elsewhere. They put in the pin, and then it said, right, it's locked for a minute now. Then they took the NAND out of here, and they plugged it into a computer, and they checked on the computer against the other NAND, which was the mirrored version, and they checked for differences in places where they thought there would be differences. And the difference would be that now there's some sort of instruction in there to make the phone wait for 60 seconds before they can try again. And then when they found that, the difference, they copied over the original data from the mirrored NAND back on to the one that was in the phone, and then they restarted the phone, and then they got another 5 goes, and then it ran out again, they went back, done it again, and then they've got as many tries as they want to go back in and try the code again. So that's quite a clever way of getting around that time delay. And it kind of reminds me of this thing that we used to do when I played, what was it, Red Alert or something like that. Anyway, there was this cheat thing called the cheat engine. Basically what the cheat engine did was you started the game, and then you window keyed to get back to the desktop, and you put in how much money you had, and then you went into the game and you spent some money, and then you went back out to the cheat engine, put in the money amount again, how much it was now, and then what it did was it searched the registry for the numbers. Obviously any one number will appear a number of times in the registry, on a Windows computer anyway. So if you put in like 10 million, that might show up loads of times in the registry. But when you go back in, so the first time you put that in this cheat engine, it sort of mapped out everywhere where that number showed up on the registry. And then when you went back into the game and you spent like say some amount of money, now you've got $9,487,225, and then you come back out and put that back into the cheat engine, it looks for through each of those registry entries, and it looks for where that other number, let's say 9,458,000, whatever it was, where it says that now. And then once it identifies where that registry key is, it'll come up and say, I found it, brilliant. Then it'll give you an option to go in and edit it whilst the game's in play, and you can go in and put in 10 million again, or you can put in 100 million, or you can put in whatever you want. And then when you go back to the game, now you've got that much money. Fantastic for games. And it's the same sort of idea with this, because you're looking at what was on the NAND, and then but it's a bit more in depth because you've got to mirror this NAND first, which is a complete nightmare because you need to get it off, and then you need to know all about the different technologies, which most of it I didn't really get. Basics of it is that you're copying what's stored on this phone, and there's all sorts of things in there to stop you doing that or make it difficult for you. So you're copying what's on there, and then you're changing it by putting in the pin, and then you're looking where it's changed on the copy, or cross-referencing it with the copy, and then putting that code back in the same areas on the one that's on the phone, and that gives you unlimited tries, almost unlimited. This is why I was saying that the 4-digit pin, the fact that this was a 4-digit pin was important. The amount of tries you need for a 4-digit pin is 10,000, so you only need to do the pin 10,000 times, which means divide that by 5. 2,000 times you're going to have to go in and potentially rewrite the data in the same locations on the NAND on this drive from the storage one to get that, because every time you get 5 goes. So when you're coming back in, when you're rewriting the data so you can come back in and get your 5 goes again, you're going to have to potentially do that 2,000 times to get to the 10,000 tries if you got the pin on the very last go. The problem with that is that the NAND has a finite rewrite limit, so basically if you write to the same section on the NAND over, I think it's something like 10,000 times, you get to write and rewrite on the same storage part of the NAND, then it stops working. It's not designed to deal with that. It's like your hard drive crashing, a part of it will stop working and that would ruin it completely. I think it was like 170,000 times you can do that, or maybe even less, I can't remember. It was close anyway, maybe it was 17,000. But anyway, basically if you get to that number, you're potentially going to ruin it for the whole thing, because you can't change it then, and also they didn't have a perfect mirrored copy of the NAND to fall back on. If they could mirror it perfectly, it wouldn't matter, because they could mirror it as many times as they wanted and just keep a backup. The reason why it was important to have a 4-digit pin was that they could potentially get into it within 10,000 tries. If you've got a 6-digit pin, it makes the thing almost impossible with this technology, because you then, unless they got it early on, unless they only had to rewrite it a few times. But if you've got a 6-digit pin, the numbers go up a bit. 1 million potential combinations in a 6-digit code, which probably everyone should be using. It's only 10,000 in a 4-digit code. It's 1 million in a 6-digit code, so it kind of makes sense. It's only 2 more numbers for you to remember, and you use your finger most of the time anyway nowadays. So that's how they did it. TLDR, they took the storage off the phone, copied it, and then rewrote the data that changes when you get to the point where it tells you to wait for a minute, and then restarted the phone, and then they got a minute again, and then they just kept doing that and kept brute forcing the password until they cracked it. It was suggested a few times in the paper as well that it might be better if you could emulate the storage. So basically what you would do then is you would get an emulation of an iPhone 5C on your computer, and then you would mirror the storage off of the one you've got, and various different security keys and stuff and unique identifiers, and sort of clone the whole phone onto your computer, which is possible. That's called an emulation. And then once you've done that, you can do it as many times as you like, because you're never going to lose that storage. You can have a copy of it somewhere backed up in the cloud, anywhere you like, and when you get to that 5 goes, it can be as simple as just saying reset the machine and go again, put it back to how it was when we started and go again. The way it deals with that storage is the same on the 5, 5S, 5C and 6, but then it changes on the 6S, so it becomes more difficult. They've done something different on that, so you can't do the same thing. But yeah, I thought that was a very interesting way that they managed to get into the phone, so I thought I'd share that with you in case you were interested in how they did that. So obviously the possibility of someone doing that to your phone is probably quite slim, unless you had some information that someone definitely wanted and they managed to get your actual phone off of you to get it. But it is a possibility. It's probably sorted in later releases of it, like iOS 10, it's probably sorted. They probably do something completely different now so that people can't do that, or you certainly would expect them to, because they would know, they would be aware that that's an option. If you found this video helpful or interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thank you.